Thank you very much, Shantha, for that enlightening identification of a party member. Thank you very much. Party Chairman Stuart Young, Deputy Political Leader Rohan Sinanan, Colb Imbert, Ansel Dennis, Nayan Gadsby Dolly, Lady Vice Chairman Mrs. Camille Robinson Regis, General Secretary Foster Cummings, other party officers, all members of the PNM, supporters of the PNM, fellow citizens, welcome to the PNM's celebration of our 69th anniversary as we step into our 70th year. We in this room know who we are and why we are here. But what do we say to the rest of the nation looking on or listening? Who is this PNM of which so much is said, of which so much is recognized? Let me use the words of Dr. Eric Eustace Williams to answer that question today, because it's as pertinent now as it was in 1956. And I quote for you: "We are not an ordinary party in the narrow sense of the word. We are rather a rally, a convention of all and for all, a mobilization of all the forces in the communities, cutting across race, religion, class, and color, with emphasis on united action by all the people in a common cause," unquote. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the description of the People's National Movement. And you would have heard at least one political leader, in this case Prime Minister Patrick Manning, say on more than one occasion that Trinidad and Tobago is not an easy country to govern. It is not because he was being overcome by the assignment of governing Trinidad and Tobago, but he was identifying the potential for differences, because we are a nation of very many peoples, different ethnicities, races, classes, cultures, and temperaments. And in that way, those differences could easily have made our country ungovernable, even though some people work hard at it to make it ungovernable. The PNM's commitment in that fundamental principle I just mentioned allowed us not only to prosper, but to be resilient and to get stronger over time. Today, the PNM is stronger than ever. And if there is one legacy that the PNM must hold on to as having given to this country against the background of who we are, it must be an acknowledgement that the PNM's role in engendering, nurturing, supporting, and defending interracial solidarity is in fact its shining star in Trinidad and Tobago. Because without it, this country would indeed have been ungovernable and would have had all the ingredients of the failed state that some people very frequently and glibly talk about. But instead, we've made it not as a destination, but a journey. I use the verb is in talking about that journey, and not was a journey, because it's a continuation, a continuum from 1956 to 2025 and onwards, outwards, upwards. The PNM is there building a nation. This journey continues on the fundamental principles of this political party, which has stood out in the region, and I dare say the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, We have had leaders out of this organization, and each leader has had his issues of the day to deal with. Dr. Williams, who formed this party, had to confront the disconnection from a colonial existence, from operating as chief minister under colonial conditions, in a situation where the economy was in fact operated for the benefit of others outside. He had to deal with that. Today, we didn't have to deal with that. He dealt with that. Later on, when Patrick Manning came in as Prime Minister, he met this country in an IMF program being dictated to by the IMF. And our operations with respect to our support for our population being funded by an IMF program. And he took the decision that we will not remain in this program for one day too long, but we will take our own medicine and get out of the program and be able to make our own decisions. That was the Manning challenge. George Chambers had his own challenge too, because stepping in, going to bed one night as George Chambers minister and waking up next morning as George Chambers prime minister, he had to continue Dr. Williams' legacy with no notice. And of course, during his term, our lifeblood almost dried up when the price of oil sunk to $9 a barrel. And of course, an impatient nation, egged on by those who don't care what they do in this country, could not understand the challenges that George Chambers had. And of course, yours truly came into office after a splurge of the most corrupt government this country has ever seen. And uncaring at that. Every single thing we try to do, they wouldn't say there are difficulties. They would say it is because we are incompetent. They wouldn't say it's because the kitty is not as full as it used to be. But let me take you down a little bit of road to point out to you how times are different. So when you hear people talking, there are different times and different horses for different courses. Between 2010 and 2015, one could call that the good times. Not because of who was in office, but because of what we were able to earn during that period as a result of what we have been doing before. And the average revenue per annum during that period, 2010 to 2015, earned from the energy sector, which is our main backbone of earnings in this country, was $26.3 billion a year earned from the energy sector. That is what that government had to deal with. By the time we got to 2016 to 2021, when we got into office in 2015, September 7th, the average for the next 6 years was $10 billion a year from that source, the energy sector. And of course, we did some serious work during that period to improve it, and there was some improvement in the market price. So for 2 years, 2022 and 2023, we averaged $30 billion a year. But as things change, or volumes drop and prices drop in the external market, we're down to $14 billion a year as of 2024. So that is a snapshot, a thumbnail sketch of what the country has to deal with and what leaders have to deal with. So clearly, in a period where the average was $20 billion a year, as against 1 year where it was $7.5 billion from that source, the energy source, you couldn't just be getting on and saying, well, leave it so, leave it so, leave it so, leave it so. We had challenges. And it is because the PNM is rooted in its fundamental principles and the support of you, its members, and the wider national community that we have been able to make the changes that we have been able to make in this era to come to the 69th year and say to you that we too have been fixing the problems of Trinidad and Tobago. But those problems don't end. They're continuous, because as you fix one, another one appears. As you engage one, another one appears. But you have to be, like the PNM, an organization that believes that this country has a future. Ladies and gentlemen, I look on with absolute amazement at people who live in this country and know nothing about it. How do you explain, ladies and gentlemen, party members, supporters, citizens all, a leader in Trinidad and Tobago who believes that how we get along in the world is to pander to somebody else's politics in somebody else's country? Dr. Williams had to deal with London in the colonial days. We never saw that. Let me give you a little story. Because right now in Trinidad and Tobago, there are those of you outside of this room, of course, who believe that the behavior of the opposition leader is required because America has a new president and we have to make sure we please that president, otherwise dog eat with supper. But there was a scandal in Piarco Airport when that same political party had helped themselves to what didn't belong to them. And there was a Republican government in America. Patrick Manning went to see President George Bush and said to him, as a PNM Prime Minister in Trinidad and Tobago, we are resolute that we will not encourage and we will pursue white-collar crime wherever it occurs in our country. That is government policy. And we in Trinidad and Tobago was going round in circles and circles and circles and circles, trying to deal with getting justice for what had happened at Piarco Airport. The Americans had gone to jail already. They were standing by to be state witness in America. But a PNM Prime Minister was talking to a Republican president about our inability to pursue white-collar crime at Piarco Airport. And George Bush said to Patrick Manning, I will see what I can do. And we didn't know what that meant. But sometime not too long after, a few boxes of documents arrived in Trinidad and Tobago. And as a result of that, and a PNM government that kept the promise that Patrick Manning gave George Bush, today we are in line to collect $175 million in America from persons who stole our money. And that is after 5 years of a government doing absolutely nothing to pursue the matter in New York, in Miami. And of course, alongside that, only a week or two ago, we're in the court in Miami fighting to collect another $20 million in costs. You will never hear that from anybody else in this country except the People's National Movement. They behave as though that never happened. And pretending as though we as a government have to saddle our country to somebody's political party in another country to be able to do right by our citizens. But tonight, I want to say to the opposition who embarrassed and disgraced us last week, I want to quote for them from this PNM platform the words of a Caribbean champion, a Caribbean Democrat, former Prime Minister of Barbados, Errol Barrow. And he said, like Dr. Williams said, we are friends of all and satellite of none. So when we of the PNM, government of Trinidad and Tobago, conducting national business, recognizing that we subscribe to fundamental principles of non-interference and non-intervention. When a difficulty arose in Venezuela, your PNM government, steeped in those policies and believing in them, we didn't go jumping up and down trying to support any political party in America or in Europe. We went straight to the United Nations and we ask for guidance and support and even protection. And we don't choose a government in Venezuela. We don't choose a government in Washington. We respect and we operate and we conduct our diplomacy in all kinds of environment. It was completely unpatriotic for the UNC under those circumstances, while we were talking to the government of Venezuela as against an individual, in a situation where Trinidad and Tobago's future, as we know it, where our standard of living as we know it, our economy as we built it, depends on external raw materials that we can get from our neighbor. And we are proud to say that we are the government, PNM is the party that broke the barrier and opened the door for our future to accept raw materials from Venezuela. They put that in the context of Trinidad and Tobago supporting an individual. The contract that we have is with the government of Venezuela. And if the people of Venezuela change their government, it will not be done by us, but that contract is a contract with the state of Venezuela. And by the same token, it doesn't matter which party put sanctions on Venezuela, because both parties in Washington put sanctions on Venezuela. Both parties. Our assignment was to get to Washington to make our case, to influence people, and to get a carve-out from the sanctions that they put on Venezuela, which was smothering Trinidad and Tobago's operations with our neighbor. And we succeeded in doing that. We've got an OFAC license from Washington when Washington has sanctioned on Venezuela. And instead of supporting us in such difficult circumstances, all we get from them is an attempt to celebrate where it appears as though we may not have succeeded. Ladies and gentlemen, we have problems in Trinidad and Tobago. Because what kind of people could be so disconnected from the interests of our people that where it appears as though we could succeed, they can't share in that success. They have to try to damage it. I am saying here today, when I saw what happened with the UNC going to Australia, writing to the Australian opposition to tell the Australian opposition not to allow the Australian government to help us fund the two ferries, the APT James and the Buko Reef, knowing that we had great difficulty in connecting our two islands and that they had in fact collapsed the ferry service. What did they hope to gain by that? And when the opposition did not take them on, they wrote to the Attorney General of Australia asking him to open an investigation into corruption between Rowley and Malcolm Turnbull. Today we have two ferries, two of the best ferries in the world operating between Port of Spain and Scarborough. And we have CG-41 and CG-42, the two best vessels ever put in the Coast Guard of Trinidad and Tobago. They wrote to outsiders across our border asking them to not allow that to happen because they believe that it will benefit the PNM. They believe it will give the PNM an advantage in the political arena, not that it will serve the people of Trinidad and Tobago, you know. It will somehow benefit the PNM. And that is exactly what happened with the Sandals project. Today, I saw two pieces of correspondence in the international media. One is that St. Vincent, for the first time, has an explosion in its tourism. They've had over 104,000 long-stay visitors to St. Vincent. First time they crossed 100,000. And their tourism is booming. And you know what is causing that? The Tobago sandals. The Tobago sandals. The project that was too good for Tobago that they believe that the PNM would have benefited in the Tobago House of Assembly and national election, so scuttle it, so they could win elections. It is exactly that which is happening. Why the opposition UNC has come out so obscenely and vulgarly and attached itself to the political campaign of an American political party to provoke the Venezuelan president and the government there to prevent them from cooperating with Trinidad and Tobago in their oil and gas business. Exactly that. Make no mistake about it. And they're standing by to celebrate failure. That the dragon failed and the dragon failed and the dragon failed like the dragon tail. Let me tell you something. They do not want this country to succeed if it means that they fail at the polls. But in this PNM, come opposition, come government, we are there for the people of Trinidad and Tobago in fair weather or foul. We exist for 69 years and counting because we are here for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Everything that they believe will hurt us, they're there for that. Ladies and gentlemen, 69 years has been a long time. As Dr. Williams talked about, we're not a party in the ordinary sense of the word. What used to happen then? Every Tom, Dick, and Harry who felt that they had a political narrative run as a party or an independent. They had so many parties, the alphabet couldn't manage them. And Dr. Williams came and brought party politics, discipline, and a vision for a nation, and fulfilled all of that. Today, we are the most disciplined party, and we have fulfilled the vision that Dr. Williams had for us. And that is why we should be proud and not let anybody tell us how to embrace our party or how to conduct our business. In recent times, we've had our challenges. And to my great surprise, guess who is most concerned about the outcome of our challenges? The opposition leader. And all I will say to her, mind your own fallen feathers. But you see, I stand here tonight coming from close to the beginning. Only last weekend, I was in Tobago celebrating in a reunion with my classmates of 1962. Most of you in this room weren't born then. But I went into high school in 1962. And that was the year when we became independent. And we were the group of students that Dr. Williams was talking to when he said that the future of this nation is in your book bag. I was in high school, went to school in January, and that statement was made in August. And we spent all of last weekend in Tobago, I think there were about almost 40 of us there from that class, saying, thank God for Dr. Williams and the PNM. Because it was the coming of the PNM in the early part of this 69 years that gave us hope, gave us a future. As we reminisced last weekend, talking about what we did and who we met, and we took those things for granted as children, but looking back, there were fundamental changes in the lives of people. I was the first person in my household, in my family, to have gone to high school, and today I'm Prime Minister of the country. And all my colleagues had a similar story. And that is how you understand how powerfully the PNM impacted on this nation. My grandfather used to work with his friends, and in those days, a laborer's wage was a blue note. You're still getting paid a blue note, right? Except that in those days, a blue note was $2. Yeah, the $100 bill we have now. Our first blue note was a blue note $2 bill. That was a daily wage from 7 in the morning till 4 in the evening. An old age pension was $14 a month, 1-4. But when I graduated and became a gazetted public servant, fisheries assistant in Tobago, and those of you who are jealous, my first job was in Pigeon Point Beach. That's where I worked in the fisheries department every Thursday. $169 a month. And then I went into teaching at $225 a month. But we weren't complainers. We weren't complainers. We were focused on the future. And that future took me all the way to the University of the West Indies, where I spent 8 years studying. Never being in a hurry, but ever thankful that somebody came to my rescue who didn't come to the rescue of my 5 brothers. And there isn't a family in this country today who cannot look at our 69 years and find something in there where the PNM's policies and programs changed their lives and their families' lives. So, when we talk about 69 years, it is not just counting year by year. There were mountains to climb. There were programs to defend. I mean, the Calypsonians sang about the PAYE, Sparrow's famous Calypso, the doctor said to pay as you earn. Where would we be without PAYE? Where would we be? And if we were not in a position to purchase Texaco's refinery and its properties when Texaco left, where would we be today? I distinctly recall when the PNM bought Texaco refinery, there were people in this country who were opposed to it, arguing that if Texaco didn't want it and found it what didn't make sense, why is the government buying it? But it changed so many lives because the PNM believe in this country. Caroni Limited was not called Caroni Limited, it was called Caroni 1975 Limited. Because in 1975, all the sugar owners of the various estates decided that sugar was dead. And all those who lived off the sugar industry, they were going to die with it. It was a PNM government that bought up all the estates, made one company, and made Caroni 1975 Limited and gave us 25 years more in the sugar business. You will never hear that from anybody else except the PNM. And of course, I could tell you, because in 1962, when we went into school, the much maligned common entrance came as a boon to people who had no chance. So before common entrance was no entrance. No chance. But there wasn't enough school places and teachers. So there had to be a process by which you try to take the best students and give them an opportunity. We had to do 2 exams, not one like no, it was 2. Did 2 to screen out, take another batch, have another exam, and after the second exam, imagine a school like Mason Hall Government School, probably the best school in Tobago, probably the best primary school in the country. We got 4 passes, 4 students. 4 going to Bishop's High School. That's what it was. Today, every single child in this country has access to secondary education. One of the areas that we've made the most progress other than education was in the health sector. Healthcare was cursory, preliminary, and wanting in most communities. But today, in Trinidad and Tobago, 69 years after the PNM, we have in every community, East, West, North, Central, and Tobago, a modern hospital providing medical care of the highest order for free. The Colonial Hospital in Port of Spain was expanded a little later on, but eventually the main block in that hospital was condemned in 2009. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, nothing happened. But this government decided that we are running true to our commitment to available health care of the highest standard. So in the next few weeks or days or whenever, we will take delivery of the most modern hospital tower in the Caribbean. Over 500 beds in a brand new hospital in the city of Port of Spain, where the main block was condemned and pulled down and built in an era of reduced government revenue. Ladies and gentlemen, this PNM and this nation of Trinidad and Tobago, we are inseparable. The country's story for 69 years is the PNM story. The country's success is the PNM success. But in the conversation, you will hear some of our friends and some of our colleagues will even say, PNM has done nothing. They will say, we've done nothing. In many instances, that statement comes from some beneficiary of some aspect of government policy which they either don't know about or don't care to know about. But it is not for us to measure people's gratitude. It is for us to keep on keeping on the policies and programs with our belief in the hope of Trinidad and Tobago getting better and better each year. Why would we who have served as a proud independent nation, serving on the Security Council of the United Nations. Only last year, the President of the United Nations General Assembly was a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. But some leader in this country believe that to be somebody, you have to genuflect and prostrate yourself in front of somebody who don't even know you. But these are important things, ladies and gentlemen, because they are indications of what is going to be your portion if you put God out your thoughts and put them in charge of your affairs. Because when you go on platform and say, we're going to open back Caroni Limited, is that a real statement? And we're going to open back the refinery. Is that a real commitment? Or is that just pandering to the uninformed? Not concerned about the fact that we have restructured Petrotrin. Heritage is paying the debt that the Minister of Finance could not pay. Because if the Minister of Finance was required to make that payment in 2018, we would have been downgraded and we would have ended up in the IMF. But having restructured Petrotrin, operating Heritage in the way it's operating now, paying its taxes, earning revenue by selling oil and not losing money in the process, is servicing the loan. That is what a government does to fix a country's problem. That's what it does. And of course, for 15 years, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, as part owner of the Loran Manatee gas field through which the Venezuela-Trinidad and Tobago border runs, for 15 years, they were there talking about unification, meaning that we will operate it together. And unless we get an agreement to operate it together, the gas stays in the ground. It was in this era under this government that we were able to go to Venezuela, sit down with the Venezuelan government and make a situation to convince them to allow Trinidad and Tobago to go into the Manatee field and extract our gas, 27% of the Loran Manatee field that is going on right now. And the same thing happens with the smaller field of cocaine and mannequin. Shell on Manatee, BP on cocaine. It was there. It wasn't done by others. It was done by the PNM. And the least we could have hoped for is the support of our colleagues in the parliament or in the political arena. But don't count on that. What they're trying to do is to create situations where they can say this one failed and that one failed. That's not a failure. Let me tell you what the failure is going to be. If this country is unable to improve its production in natural gas, something that we are consuming every day from a limited supply in our fields, burning up 2.6 billion cubic feet per day. So even what little we're producing to keep us on that rate, if we don't have additional gas, we can't improve on those volumes. And if we don't and keep consuming it, as it has come down from 4.2 to 3.8 to 3.6 to 2.7 and going down. That is what we're going to be afraid of. That is what we have to be afraid of. And I could tell you, no other government has been able in a short space of time to do what we have done to address an issue like that. As part of our 69 years, we have in fact entered the business of LNG. Not Dr. Williams, not George Chambers, but Patrick Manning's era, when we embraced the idea of monetizing our gas. There was advice to us then to leave the gas for our future children, you know. But of course, they didn't know then of the tremendous pressure that was going to come on countries and companies to get out of the hydrocarbon business. Today, raising money to explore for oil and gas is very difficult. Getting companies to spend money on exploration is far more difficult than it ever was. We had an oil field here in Trinidad and Tobago owned by BHP. They own the oil field. On their books, it's a value. Put it into the bottom line, but it's doing nothing for us. I had to go to Australia, to Melbourne, to sit down and talk to the decision maker, to look the man in his face, the one who is making the decision to spend the exploration money, and say to him that we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we have given you license for that field. It does not benefit us for you having the license and not using the field. We need production from that field. And his response was, well, we didn't budget for that. And we haven't been budgeting for that. And we are, in fact, going back to our core business, meaning we are going away from that. But he was gracious. He said, but you've made a strong case. It might have been a little too late. And I left Melbourne a little dejected, but I had made the case for Trinidad and Tobago. And maybe about 4 or 5 months later, BHP announced that they will spend the $500 million on the Ruby field. It's producing oil now. When a conversation was required to get the Manatee field produced without Loran, I went to London. It was at a downswing in the oil price to talk to Shell. And I went talking to the Shell board. And they listened. And they said to me, you know, we're losing $2 billion a day now. $2 billion a day they were losing at that time. And I was asking them to take on Trinidad and Tobago's problems. And they listened. And we convinced them. Shell is today probably the largest investor in Trinidad and Tobago, having bought out BG and a number of other companies, and is now the largest shareholder of Atlantic LNG. And we didn't stop there. We said we need a better earning from our gas. And thanks to Minister Young and his team at the Ministry of Energy, we have restructured the LNG business. Those approaches have brought into our treasury additional billions of dollars which were not going to be there. And the question I want to ask today is this: had we been like the others and not been successful in these matters, where will Trinidad and Tobago be today? Not a single public servant gazetted has lost his or her job during this very difficult period. Not one. And I don't know that a month has passed when every public servant was not paid in this country. And we continue to spend upwards of $6 billion a year on social programs. Much of it in an unfunded pension program, supporting tens of thousands of people whose only dollar is the one the government gives them. And yet you can hear conversations about PNM and do nothing, the government ain't do nothing for me. Let them say that. And let them believe that. And let it be so. And then they will know where barley grew. Ladies and gentlemen, we have this PNM. We have provided more for our citizens than any similar country anywhere in the world. So we're not only strong on interracial solidarity. When Sparrow sang in 1962, tell the world there's a model nation at last on the question of interracial solidarity, we're strong on that. And that is why I want to say to all those who want to dip their nose and whatever else in PNM business, when you see the PNM caucus vote Stuart Young to lead the PNM in the parliament as Prime Minister, get the hell out of our business. And don't you believe that you can incite PNM members about who is our leader and the shade of his skin, because it is the same PNM members who before that voted him as chairman of the People's National Movement. So party members, don't get tied up. Don't get tied up. And I'll tell you more than that too. Of the divisions that we have in this country and those who will divide us in the 69th year, the question is, a Chinese Prime Minister? Is that Chinese? From Lal Bihari Trace in Pinal? But my first Chinese that I knew was Sir Solomon Ho Choi. He was a friend of my grandfather, because my grandfather was a farmer shipping goods to Trinidad from Tobago. And Solomon Ho Choi was a tally clerk. You ever heard of a tally clerk? A tally clerk would be the clerk by the port with a book who writing down what is going on the boat. That was Solomon Ho Choi's probably his first job. That's where he got to know my grandfather. So when Hurricane Flora destroyed us in Tobago in 1963, I distinctly saw my grandfather writing a letter to Solomon Ho Choi. And I saw the reply from the Governor General himself. So we are not unknown to, or Chinese are not unknown to us. So let's keep all the foolishness where all they belong. Right? Today, I want to say to you party members in our 69th celebration, there's nothing that I am prouder of than being able to stand here this evening and say, I gave you a commitment to transition the PNM by ensuring that we bring up our young people, that we expose them, and that we give them responsibility. I've done that. Today, in the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, is a large block of young people, supported by some experienced people. And those young people in this party, going into the election of 2025, have under their belt at least 5 years and maybe almost 10 years of ministerial responsibility in Trinidad and Tobago. No other political party, no other government has ever been able to say that. And that is why I am so proud. And that, for me, is a major responsibility that I've been able to discharge to this party and to this country. In Tobago, the electorate did it. So we end up today with a team, Ansel, Kelvin, and Petel, 3 young people, standing in the breach for the people of Tobago against a rampant bunch of youngsters who don't know if they're coming or they're going. But the PNM 3, like the PNM 1, will multiply in the coming months and years. We are not in this business only for ourselves. We have an interest in it. We have an interest in our party succeeding, in our country succeeding. But we have a small minority calling themselves the criminal gangs who are hell-bent on making our lives a living hell. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not new. It's not new. I don't know how many of you, I was passing in front of Renegades yesterday, and it crossed my mind that Renegades, the name Renegades, where did it come from? And before Despas, you ever heard of Marabuntas? Right. We have always had gangs in our urban communities. But the same way the country has developed from the $2 bill to the $100 blue note, the original gangs doing the same thing that they do now, providing social gathering and comfort and identity to some youngsters who are going astray. They used to fight with razor and ice pick and physical muscle and iron bolt and cutlass. So they used to fight with. And then there was a time when the plague was homemade guns. And then we started to get an inexhaustible supply of lethal handguns and now assault weapons designed as efficient killing machines. And because the ability to kill has improved so much, the negative input of the gangs in our society has multiplied manyfold. It is a challenge, one that we have to engage. And that engagement has to start in the home. My father raised 6 boys and never one day ever had to talk to anybody in the police service about any of his children, because he always took the position that his role was to educate us, to respect the law, respect ourselves, respect other people, and in fact, be caring and productive. That's what you teach children to do. We are failing in many parts of that. And of course, those who are given the responsibility, onerous responsibility, to treat with the criminal element, productivity on their part, is a challenge for us too. I remember my grandfather lending a man some money, and the man wouldn't pay, poor man couldn't pay, because the money was hard to come by. And my grandmother egged him on to go and put the man in the court. The man went to the court, man's from Moriah. The man started to hide from the police when the warrant was issued, and would stay out all day and come back in late in the night. The police went under his house and waited there until he come back in the night. In Moriah, arrested him at 4 o'clock in the morning and walked him from Moriah to Scarborough Police Station to execute the warrant. That's how police used to work. They ain't telling you, we have no resources. Moriah to Mason Hall, that's 2 miles. Mason Hall to Scarborough, 4 miles. That's police work. apprehend a man on a warrant for monies not paid to somebody he owed. Today, we have killers laughing at us because we believe that there's a perfect response to the criminal element. There's no individual perfect response. We want an overall response where every household should be aware, every officer should be aware, wherever you are, that there are people among us for whom crime is a chosen way of life. It's not politics. It's not class. It's not geography. We are all in danger. And as I appeal to the population to be more discerning and to take some more responsibility for those who go astray, the government has to be resolute in crime fighting as it has been in providing education, in providing health, and in conducting effective foreign policy. It's all together there. As we move forward into our 70th year, for me personally, it's a year I'll never forget. And I hope to address you one more time, so I won't say too much tonight. But this 70th year would be the year when I walk away from responsibility in this nation. But I do so having come the full circle from working with my hands in the dirt, planting grass on Hope Estate, to signing documents of billions of dollars for you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And to the national population, especially our young people, you can find it within you to associate with the PNM, to join the PNM, to support the PNM, to vote for the PNM, to develop with the PNM, because the PNM, by its fundamental principles and its 69-year record, is all good. Good. It's good. And when I made that call in Tobago in 2013 to the young people of Tobago, I'm making it to the young people of Trinidad here now tonight. Come forward and take responsibility for your country. I ask you to look at the PNM's lineup, look at the PNM slate, and you see a future, and you see opportunity, and you see exemplary conduct by a political party that is proud of its nation and believe in Trinidad and Tobago. So, an election is due. Today is a celebration. We celebrate the 69 years that have passed. But we have more celebrating to do in 2025. We're going to celebrate victory in 2025. But it won't come easy. It won't come easy. It is going to come by us uniting as that fearsome fighting force where unity is our strength. And it's not me, it's we shall prevail. So tonight, I want to say to you, PNM, wherever you are, happy 69th anniversary. Come together, join your hands together, and once we are together as a united fighting force, no political force in Trinidad and Tobago can stand between us and victory. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM, and we shall prevail. Feel my love unfolding like a laughing flame. All who did not know me when I done, they gon' know the name. Million people coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give our political leader and the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, a lusty round of applause.